Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and today you join me from the cockpit of Winston, my girlfriend Kat's plastic Ford Fiesta. I've got a week off work starting today, and I was hoping to spend the whole week working on my ST170 Mk2 Escort project, which is getting very close to being back on the road. Those of you who've been watching my videos will know that lately I've had a bit of grief with my other Escort, my 2-litre Zetec powered Moredoor Mk2 that I like to call Maude. Now I think I've managed to fix the crank sensor wiring issue I was having, because it seems to be running sweet since I fitted the replacement crank sensor wire from Brands Hatch Performance. But yesterday, on the way up the M1 to see my parents in Northampton, the clutch failed. I went to change down from 5th to 4th to accelerate away a bit, and it went crunch and wouldn't go into gear. At first I thought that the clutch cable had snapped, but I could still feel that there was tension under the pedal, so that's obviously not the issue. I managed to turn the car around and limp it home without a clutch, and today I'm going down to the garage to investigate exactly what has gone wrong. I just need to pass through to my local Royal Mail delivery office to pick up a parcel, which is probably going to be something I've ordered for the Mark 1, and then I'm going to be heading straight down to the garage. So I'll catch up with you when I get there. Hello, so I'm around the garage now with the Mark II. Before I jack the car up, I just want to go into a bit more detail about the breakdown yesterday. So as I said, I went to drop a cog from 5th to 4th and it went crunch. Now I was just passing a junction at the time, so I basically rolled off of the motorway and then came to a stop. Now obviously, because I was on my own, I wasn't able to push the clutch and have a look in the engine bay to see what was going on. But as I say, there was still tension under the clutch pedal, so I know that the cable hadn't snapped. I decided to turn around and limp the car home. And then a few seconds down the road, I heard a rotational vibrating noise, and I thought that maybe the gearbox was about to fail completely. But then a few seconds after that, I heard what sounded like a bolt falling out and pinging off down the road, and then the rotational vibrating noise went away. So I decided to carry on limping the car back here to the garage. Halfway home, I got a puncture, and I didn't have a spare with me or my jack, but I did have a can of Tyre World, luckily, so I bunged that in, and then I was able to carry on getting the car back here to the garage. So what do I think has gone wrong with Maude's clutch? Well, I think it's going to be one of two things. Either the pivot pin has come out of the bell housing again, although when that happened last time, it didn't actually affect how the clutch operates. It just meant that the clutch fork was vibrating around a lot in the bell housing. The other thing I think it could be, which is probably more likely, is one of the Allen key bolts has come out, which holds the gearbox to the bell housing. And that's probably what I heard when it sounded like a bolt pinged off down the road. Those of you who have been watching my videos will know that I only actually had 3 out of the 4 of those bolts fitted. I do have a brand new gearbox and a brand new bell housing to go in, so hopefully all the other parts to do with the clutch will be fine, and it will just be a case of fitting the new gearbox and the new bell housing, and then she should be back on the road. Now the only real way to tell exactly what did go wrong with the car yesterday is to get it jacked up and investigate. So that's what I'm going to do now. Right, so I've got the car jacked up, got the front as high as my shit axle stands will go, and then I've got the back jacked up a little bit as well. Now before I dive under there and try and figure out what went wrong with the clutch, I'm going to disconnect my new crank sensor wire from the crank sensor, because I don't want to risk it getting trapped in between the bell housing and the engine later on when I'm doing this job. So here's the crank sensor wire. It's available on eBay from a company called Brands Hatch Performance. I'll leave an eBay link in the description. It is an affiliate link, so it won't cost you any extra, but it will help me out a little bit. Now, to be honest, this crank sensor wire seemed a lot better quality than the one that was actually attached to my MOTORWAY loom. Now, these crank sensor wires have a shield, which is basically a layer of metal on the outside of the other 2 wires, and that is to stop other electrical noise, like from your alternator and stuff, affecting how this wire transfers the signal from your crank sensor to the MOTORWAY. Now the one that came on the MOTORWAY loom was like a foil coating, whereas this one is more like a sheath. Now the shield has to be grounded, and I'll just show you that inside the car. I'll just leave this out of the way so that it definitely won't get damaged while I'm changing this gearbox. Now obviously it's all covered so you can't actually see the sheath, but as I say, I was literally just able to peel some of it back, twist it, and then it's just like a wire. So then I've soldered that to this orange wire here, which is then earthed to the body with the other earths for the MOTORWAY. Now, I didn't have the correct pins to attach these two wires to the MOTORWAY plug, so what I did instead is just done a little soldering job with a bit of heat shrink to join them to the wires that were already in the MOTORWAY plug that were obviously attached to the original crank sensor wire. But it's all working fine, and if I do have any issues in the future with these joints, I now have the correct pins, so just a case of cutting them off, attaching the right pins, removing the old pins from this multi-plug, and then plugging the new pins in. But it's all working sweet so far. So with all that being said, it's time to jump underneath Maude and see if I can figure out what exactly went wrong with the clutch yesterday. Well, the 3 out of the 4 Allen keys that were fitted that hold the gearbox to the bell housing are still fitted. There's not one up the top there, but there's one there, and then there's 2 on this side. So that's not what was causing the issue. So what I'm going to do now is remove the starter motor, and then I can look inside the bell housing to see if the pivot pin's still in place. And obviously before I start disconnecting the wiring for the starter motor, I need to disconnect this negative terminal from the battery, which is a bit fucked. I need to replace that. So with the starter motor removed, I'm actually unable to see whether the pivot pin is still in there. So I'm going to crack on with removing the gearbox, and then I'm sure at some point I'll be able to figure out what the problem is. Now, I just want to get this job done, so I'm not going to film the actual removal of the gearbox in much detail. I've already covered it in a couple of videos anyway. But to recap, if you are new to the channel, I need to disconnect the clutch cable, disconnect the speedo cable, remove the 4 bolts that hold the prop shaft to the diff here, and then I'll put a jack under the gearbox and remove this gearbox mount, and then it will just leave the 3 Allen key bolts that actually hold the gearbox to the bell housing to remove. So I'll catch up with you once I get to that point. Got pretty much everything disconnected, and the jack is taking the weight of the gearbox. I haven't removed the clutch cable yet because I can do that after I've got the gearbox out of the way. And one thing I forgot to mention a little while ago is the gear stick, which is now removed. I can't seem to get the Allen keys undone that are holding the gearbox to the bell housing. I've tried using the flexible ratchet shaft, and I've also tried using this extended 8mm Allen key. I think I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way by disconnecting the bell housing from the block with the gearbox still attached to it, which hopefully should be possible now that I've spaced my cross member down away from the chassis. Right, so I've got the hoist set up now, taking the weight of the engine. I've loosened the bolts holding the cross member onto the chassis. So now hopefully, if I lower the engine down, I should be able to get the gearbox off. Daz has just turned up. So I'm going to disconnect the steering column from the rack and from the dash and pull the column through the bulkhead a little bit so it's out of the way, and then see if I can get the engine to go down a bit lower. Right, with the column out of the way, it seems like the engine's gone a little bit lower, and it's come a little bit forward as well, which might help get the gearbox out before it hits the tunnel.
Jack, obviously. That's it, it's out, mate.
Right, so got the gearbox off, and the pivot pin is still in place. So I'm still none the wiser as to what caused the clutch issues yesterday. Right, I've decided that I'm not going to bother putting the new gearbox on today. I've got to pick Kat up from work in about an hour and a half, so I'm just going to get the car to a point where I can roll it back in the garage. But one thing I am going to do today is remove the clutch and just inspect that everything's all right with that. Right, so I've removed the clutch and I've found the problem. This friction plate is broken. There's a piece of metal missing here, which was obviously the bit that I heard ping off and bounce down the road. And now this spring is obviously just loose. That's no good at all. As you know, if you've been watching my videos, this hasn't been on the car long at all. And it's an AP racing clutch. This definitely should have been able to handle the power I've got in the car. So I'm really not happy with that. I think I'm going to take a trip down to Burton's tomorrow. I'll probably phone them first, but maybe take a trip down to Burton's and show them. Because, in my opinion, I deserve a replacement. Right now I need to get the car back on 4 wheels and roll it back in the garage and go and pick Kat up from work. I'm going to pick this video back up once I've spoken to Burton Power about the clutch, and you'll be able to see that in just a few seconds. Hello, it's now the next day and I'm on the way back home after taking a little road trip down to Burton Power in Ilford. I gave them a call earlier and sent them a picture of my broken clutch plate, and they've been in contact with AP Racing, and we'll just have to wait till AP Racing gets back to them to find out whether I'm going to get a refund or not, which I think I deserve. The actual clutch plate that I had fitted to Maude is now being discontinued by AP Racing, and Burton Power didn't have any in stock, but they did have their heavy duty version in stock, which is slightly different to the competition one that I had fitted in that it has slightly smaller springs in it. But an AP Racing clutch is overkill for my application, so I think the heavy duty one will still do the job. Hopefully in due course I will get a refund for my old clutch, but right now I need to get Maude back on the road and then I can worry about arguing about it later on. Burton Power did give me a little bit of a discount on my new clutch, so I'm really happy about that, and I can't wait to get the clutch fitted to the car with the new gearbox and see how it all feels. I'm not going to be going back round the garage today because it's absolutely pissing down with rain, and I've only got a few hours left before I have to pick Kat up from work. And yesterday I actually failed to get there in time to pick her up and she had to get the bus. Sorry about that. Tomorrow I'm going up to Northampton to see my parents, which is what I was supposed to be doing when my clutch failed. And the day after that I'm hoping to spend a day around the garage getting Maude back on the road. You'll be able to see that in a separate video in just a few days, so I'm going to end this video here. Massive thanks as always to everyone for your continued support on my channel. If you thought this video was any good, give it a thumbs up. If you thought it was shit, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe and activate the notification bell to be kept right up to date with any other videos that I post in the future. Make sure you check out my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'll leave the links you need for that in the description as well. Until next time, thanks for watching.